What's going on, Vince? Obviously excited to have you on really quickly because you are in this. Like, this is what you deal with even before this pandemic happened. Your line of work is going out and trying to prevent things like this in all different types of whether it's workspaces, home, residential, hospitals, all of that. So I'm excited just to kind of get some more insight from you of what we're dealing with. But before we hop in, I cannot do a good enough job of talking about exactly what it is you do on a daily basis and what your expertise is. So we'd love to kind of get the high level pitch, if you will, or about what it is you do, your service, and then we'll kind of jump in from there.
All right. Yeah, Brandon, I appreciate the opportunity because I've been doing this for 5 years, disinfecting. Who thought a disinfecting service, 5 years ago when I started, there was only 3 companies in Atlanta. Fast forward to today with the world crisis with the coronavirus, a lot of people want disinfecting services, biodecontamination. They even want, I've had several people call me for a 911 call. They wanted to go ahead and get me into their system. So it's not if, but when it happens to them. I've probably had just last week 10 companies call me to get all the paperwork together. So should there be an emergency, the paperwork's not going to slow the process down. But the disinfectant world has changed dramatically as far as service calls and information. And I appreciate the opportunity to share it with you because there's a lot of people who don't understand, we know disinfectants from what we see in the grocery store or on TV. And some of those advertisements aren't necessarily exactly true or tell you the whole story.
Yeah. So, and you touching on that. I mean, how much things have changed just for you specifically. So you basically go and I've known you for many years. So, just trying to go back to really talking about how to market your message and what it is that you actually provide and what separates you from everybody else. And we'll get into some of that. But right now you're seeing, because of that, you're now seeing an influx of people reaching out because there's not many that can do and provide the service that you provide. However, it sounds like whenever a hailstorm comes through, all of a sudden there's a bunch of roofing companies that come out of everywhere. And it's really hard to figure out who's legit and who's not. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny you bring that up because it's a true statement. I've had gentlemen call me from Texas, Atlanta, the Carolinas, say, hey, I bought these foggers. I'm going to start a disinfecting company. And they're trying to ask me questions about just stuff you should know being in this business. This is not a pest control operation where you just take a chemical and you spray and you kill the bugs. I mean, getting into the detail, a disinfecting company, how long have they been around? You want to ask them what kind of chemical they're using. I personally like to use eco-friendly chemicals, meaning they don't leave any residue. So hydrogen peroxide, peracetic acid, or a combination of those are very lethal, especially against the coronavirus, which happens to be super frail, really easy to kill. Unfortunately, it's highly contagious. We're not even really clear still today how many CFUs or germs have to be on you to become infectious. But these pop-up companies, I've had some people said, well, I talked to another company, they're cheaper than you, but they said I had to take all the paper products off my desk. I'm like, well, that's because they're using too large of a droplet and they'll ruin your paper. I've had other people say, well, after you disinfect my room, do I have to wipe it down? Because a lot of companies have said they'll fog our room or spray our room, but we have to go back in and manually wipe the surface down. So the background on that is, like I said, I use a hydrogen peroxide that doesn't leave a residue. I like that. We use a micron that's so small, it doesn't damage your paper. You can leave all your electronics on. In fact, the technology has been approved with Boeing and FAA to be safe with their avionics. You can understand that. The droplet size has a factor to do with it. The droplets are so small they connect, but not having enough to make a droplet when they connect. So you can cover all your surfaces. The great thing about a fog system, it's whole room. Anywhere the air is, it's going to disinfect. So we can do the ceilings, the wall, the desk, the drawers, the bottom of the drawers, the bottoms of the table, all at one time. Because if you can imagine your room like a sauna, that's what it's look like. They call it a dry sauna, and it truthfully is, because you can literally go in there, even though it looks like a sauna, drag your hand across the wall or countertop, and your hand's still dry. So we have the EPA claim to kill C. diff in the triple soil load, which is one of the hardest things to kill in the U.S. And that's another thing I'm concerned about. These people are getting caught up saying we have a product kills coronavirus. Great. But your significant other died of staph or C. diff or something else. My philosophy is we target C. diff, one of the hardest things kills in the United States. If we can kill that, we can kill corona, we can kill Ebola, we can kill most of all the germs in the U.S. EPA registration is another one. Some people are just grabbing these products and they're EPA registered to kill this, to kill that. Some people are buying foggers and sprays. That's A. And then B, they're getting a EPA registered product and they're deploying it. Well, they're not tested. As far as I know right now, foggers that are EPA registered, there's very few that are EPA registered with the fogger itself and the chemical together. There's been a couple of companies who've not done that, and they've had a disaster on their hands.
Yeah. And kind of taking a step back, just to try to help paint the picture of what it is. So the biggest thing is thinking about, and this is the way that I've always thought about your business. I mean, I've got young kids. I've got every time that we go into one of those indoor playground places, like I just immediately think of you because all I can see is germs. You know what I mean? And now this virus has kind of taken things to a different level, but cleaning those facilities, and if you imagine like daycares and all that there's germs constantly everywhere. Well, you have the option to go and wipe things down like people have always done, and they wipe it down with Lysol or some type of cleaner, but you never can get every aspect of the room. You can never get every little crack and toy by just going through and manually doing that. Well, with what your product is and what you provide is you go in, and I'm going to let you touch on this a little bit more in detail, but you go in and you set up a fog machine, essentially is what it looks like, with lighting and all of that is designed to get every piece and square footage of that room and kill every germ that's within it. So for nursing homes and daycares and playgrounds and all of that, they call you in to disinfect it a lot faster, but also a lot better, because a lot of those products, if I remember correctly, they don't do as advertised. There's a lot more to it than just spraying a Lysol and it killing, right?
Right, absolutely. So the unique thing about our foggers is we laser measure the room. We know the exact cubic foot, and we have to measure by cubic feet because we're doing the walls, the ceiling, the floor, even the air. It's considered whole room disinfectant, so you're getting the air and the surfaces at the same time. Right now, CDC states if you have an infection with coronavirus, they want you to wait, depending on what literature you're looking at, 2 hours or 4 hours. The reason that is, let the droplet, or if it's airborne, let it settle. So when you go in there manually, you wipe down. With our system, we can go in immediately because we're disinfecting the air and the surfaces at one time. It's
awesome.
Other thing with our fogger is once we plug in the dimensions of the room, the machine takes over. It knows exactly how long to fog, and then how long we call a pulse fogging, which normally would be a dwell time or contact time. a lot of problems with these daycares, even hospitals. I've been in many hospitals and I've seen it firsthand. Every chemical has a dwell time, meaning it has to be on the surface for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes to get the efficacy to kill whatever pathogen. So a lot of products are 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I don't know of anybody that sprays their office or daycare or nursing home and they leave that surface wet for 5 or 10 minutes. Just in our fast-paced society, it's just really hard to do. With our fogger, we seal the room off, and we know exactly how long to fog. And then we know pulse fogging, which keeps shooting peroxide into the air to keep that full level. So we do get the kill efficacy of the germ that we're targeting. Once you're done with that, you can let it dissipate. It takes about 2 hours, or I can put a blower in there and ventilate the room and get you back in there about a half hour. But it's whole room disinfectant, all the surfaces. I tell nursing home and daycares, open up your cabinets, take the lids off the toys so it gets in there. Even take the mats out and we put them up accordion instead of laying down flat, accordion, so you get both sides of the mat.
Yeah, I mean, the efficiency of it, there's nothing else like it whenever, and I've actually seen you do it. I've seen it in action. And it's amazing because obviously people, they're starting to see it with all this going on. Whenever you have a life altering event like what we're dealing with, people start looking at things differently and they start realizing that more needs to be done, especially and people are going to be expecting that now. They're going to be expecting that certain levels are being taken whenever it comes to disinfecting the daycare or just a retail shop or whatever it may be, hospitals, specifically nursing. Like that, I feel like this is going to be a main point of topic, main point of concern for people now out there. But what people have been doing in the past, I mean, they have just been wiping down or having a cleaning crew come in at nights, just wiping down the surfaces, not realizing, and it's probably no fault to their own, they just haven't had to think past that yet until now. Because I see it and it's kind of a no-brainer to me why, especially places that are heavily infested with germs a lot of times, like a daycare or hospital and all of that. Why do you see people don't or haven't preferred to have someone like you come out, set up a fogger? It's 10 times more efficient. You're going to get, like you said, it's verified and guaranteed to a certain level. Why? Has it just been the awareness side of it, or?
I think it is. In the past, we've had, in the 70s and then the 80s, we started having more physical security at the airports, at the malls, at the banks. We had physical security because we had armed robberies and we had terrorists. And then moving forward past that, we start having cyber attack. So now we have cyber security, which everybody's very familiar with and is very active. What this world event's going to create is biosecurity. Some people are familiar with it. In the next year or two, people will understand what the word biosecurity is. Basically, you're defending against a biological or some type of germ. I foresee restaurants, it's maybe a legality reason that you need to have some type of biosecurity plan or a countermeasures to prevent a infection or an outbreak. With this virus, the odds are this is just the first one.
Yeah.
In the future, God forbid, we probably will have another virus like this. We've had similar viruses. If you remember 5 years ago, Ebola, that was the fear thing that went through the world epically and put the fear. We learned a lot from it. This virus was even more aggressive. The infection rate on this virus is 3 to 5 times faster than a normal infection. So biosecurity, I think, is going to be the future. Restaurants, daycares, schools, even corporate buildings, they're going to have to realize we need to have some type of monitoring device. For example, how many absentees do we have? Do we have 3% absentees on one floor or one area of the building, that might be a telltale sign that we need to do a whole room disinfectant. They have their environmental service teams cleaning and disinfecting. They're more really cleaning. They don't really truly disinfect. Cleaning crews are like sanitizing. By definition, sanitizing means removing some germs. Disinfecting, by definition, I will give you a log kill, what percentage I can kill. A lot of cans, sprays that you use to disinfect that you get at the grocery store are a 3 log, 99.9%. But even with that high kill rate, you still have hundreds of germs left behind that survive that. When you go up to a higher log kill like mine is a 6 log kill, 99.9999%, you're literally only leaving a few germs behind, which the importance of that is most pathogens, you need a certain amount on you to become infectious. We know like C. diff, you need several hundred cells on you to become infectious. We know Ebola, you probably only need 6 or 8 cells on you to become infectious. The coronavirus, we still don't know and haven't seen any research or studies that can show for sure how many cells of the coronavirus on you does it take to become infectious. I'm going to guess it's single digits, as aggressive as it is. But I think biosecurity is going to be the future that all businesses need to understand and have a plan for. And I didn't know this until 3 weeks ago when this really hit hard. A lot of insurance companies do not cover businesses for a viral attack.
Really?
Insurance companies are not set up that way. After this event, I'm sure they're going to re-engage that and probably make a policy or add on to your original policy that the businesses, if they have a viral attack, that their insurance will cover them. But most businesses do not cover for a viral attack. I have actually had 2 insurance companies call me and tell me this. I had no idea until they told me.
Wow. Yeah, it's just stuff that you don't think about until it happens. And then all of a sudden you're left holding the bag and because nobody put it, but it's going to change. You're right. It's going to change what people want in their policies now. And they're going to have to adjust and adapt like the rest of us. As far as the biosecurity, really quickly, I 100% agree with you. I think it's huge and something that's going to be topic from this point moving forward. It's going to change the way that we look at a lot of different things. Talk about really quickly, touch on your background, because I want people to understand that you're not just somebody that just picked up a fog machine one day and talk about your background, because I think people need to understand your credibility and where you've come from to get to this point.
Right. Appreciate you asking. Yeah. So the last couple of years I was in the Army on active duty, I was asked to work with prototype testing of DoD medical equipment. My job was to go out and find medical equipment over the horizon or in the future that DoD wanted for all branches. Either that we want it and modified to our standards, or 75% of the time, my job was the tool would not work operational wise in the environment we are. Well, I came across hydrogen peroxide fogging for disinfecting. And I knew what the requirements were, and it just wasn't there yet. When I got out of the Army, I got thinking, why don't we take disinfecting services like we use in ORs and disinfect the OR rooms, but why don't we take that and take it to daycares, to nursing home, residential areas, people with low immune system, people that just had open heart surgery or a lung transplant, because it'd be very beneficial that they come back to their home environment or their work environment and you have almost short of 0 germ count. So I look for a company. The company I use is Curus Fogger, probably the most modern fogger out there. And basically what they did is took the international foggers that were well known out there, they modified them and made them even better to a Curus fogger. With that, getting into the business, because the fogger does kill mold, I went ahead and got water and mold remediated certified. As it would be in the state of Georgia, if you kill germs you have to have a pest control license. I'm like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm spraying hydrogen peroxide, pest control license. I'm like, I'm not sure. I actually called Florida Agriculture and Virginia Agriculture, and I explained to them what I do. They're like, you're spraying peroxide, killing germs like in hospitals and buildings. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Like, no, you don't need a commercial license to kill bugs. State of Georgia. So that was another hurdle that I did not foresee, that I had to get certified in commercial pest control. And mainly I asked EPA in Georgia about that. Why? They said basically because they wanted companies to keep accountable for their chemicals. Because some of the chemicals that the people that spray for bugs, they are very toxic. I'm shocked at how toxic they are. But again, my products are eco-friendly. That's why I like them. They don't leave any residue. So if I poured out a whole bottle of peroxide on my driveway, I'd have a very clean driveway with no residue.
So the main thing, I mean, is this started from your time and while you were serving in the Army.
Well, that's where I learned about the technology. And there was actually a story I tried to share. I was overseas at one time, and at the time, the forces, a little surprised it was to me that when I was introduced to a physician that 37% of our forces were sick with an ailment. I'm like, good golly, that's pretty significant. So with me knowing about that first, I was able to act pretty rapidly about that. So I was able to
it's all right if you're getting. You probably hear my kids in the background,
yeah, right? Sorry. So
no, you're good. You're good.
I was overseas, and at one time we had about 37% of the fighting force that was sick by a type of virus, and I had no idea. Well, I found out early on, and to counter that, I got all my medics up. We wiped down all the areas. We sprayed areas. We enforced hand cleaning 3-4 times a day. Because of that, I was first to know, first to act. I was able to keep our infection numbers down to 2% compared to 37%.
Wow.
And then backing up on that, so my background getting into the disinfectant world of the medical is a flight paramedic in Atlanta for a civilian company for 15 years. And ironically, in the Army, I was also a flight paramedic on the Black Ops. So I've got a lot of background in the medical arena. I understand how hospitals work and transport systems work. Just knowing all that seems like it was an easy fit because I can associate and speak with hospitals. How does disinfectant and how these foggers work? When I talk to the EMS guys and the fire guys, the benefit of having a fogger for EMS and the fire department, you can disinfect the ambulance, but then you can take the same fogger and disinfect the bunk rooms where they sleep or their common areas. You know, fire stations are a very common area where they have 3 different crews rotating, living 24/7. And, you know, how many people go to work? I got a little sniffle, I have a cold, but I'm going to go to work and muster through it. Well, we're shedding shedding germs, sharing germs.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, I got quarantine special right here. So, yeah. Hey, buddy. No, Daddy's doing a little thing. You want to say hey to Mr. Vince here? Quarantine, man. Quarantine. He's running. Here. Gotta love quarantine. Yes. We're all dealing with it. We are all dealing with it. You can see Mommy in the background pulling the kids away. So the biggest thing, obviously, just a couple more and trying to keep this down to within, you know, the half hour that we're trying to keep it. One, from your opinion, your expertise, you've been having a lot of high profile calls, obviously, with a lot of organizations. Obviously, your background being in the military, being in the healthcare field. I think one thing that a lot of people are just looking for different perspective on is what are your thoughts? What are you feeling? How are you seeing what we're dealing with right now? What do you see the next month or two being, or the next 6 months, or and what do you just instinctively think we're dealing with from
this, I'm an operational guy. That's what it just comes easy for me. Sometimes I come off too strong on people, but this is a very aggressive virus. The good thing is the mortality rate's not really high. The good thing is after you have the virus, there's not much side effect that we know of. The dangerous areas of this virus is it spreads quickly. It's dangerous for the older people that have pre-existing conditions. So it is a very threatening virus in that way. But comparative to other diseases and viruses out there, they're still killing more people than what the coronavirus is. My fear is the media is sharing the story about the coronavirus and not really keeping a true perspective. I know on the medical side that it's super contagious. Even hospitals are having a hard time controlling it. And it just goes back to, wash your hands. I was at a corporation yesterday, and one thing I noticed was, they're doing a good job washing the hands. They were limited on hand sanitizers, but their sleeves. I'm like, you're going to wash your hands, roll your sleeves up. Imagine when I do this versus every time I'm typing on a keyboard or I'm going somewhere, what's touching everything? This is just a sponge, a Peachtree dish right there. And everywhere you're reaching and touching, your sleeves or your shirt are cross-contaminating other areas. My take on this virus is it's an aggressive virus. We will get through it. This is a life-changing event. We'll be talking about this for years. Our children will be talking about this for years. And hopefully it's the last one of its type, but I fear it is not. Just as man and society and how commutable our society and the world is today.
Yeah. And there's probably a lot of things, moving forward as well that we can take away to help it's because it's not going to be the last of its kind. And but there's a lot of stuff that we can do in order to probably help prevent or manage this so we don't get to this point moving forward. Do you got any tips for businesses as far as like things to do outside of calling you, which will,
which they probably should do first is call me and have the expert come in and tell them. But I'm glad you asked. So, obviously, if you're sick, stay home. We're in a digital age. Most people can work from home. Make that option available for them. Wash your hands, have hand sanitizer readily available, and make sure it works. Another one is when people are in the bathroom and they're washing their hands, put the garbage can next to the door. Why? Because some restaurants have learned this, some still haven't figured it out. When I wash my hand, I pull down the paper towel, I'm wiping the water off my hand. That paper towel also is causing friction and maybe getting some more germs off my hands. But now I'm taking that hand with that towel, I'm grabbing the door, I'm pulling the door open with that towel as a barrier, catching it with my foot, and I'm throwing the paper towel down. That's huge because, we've all seen studies how many times somebody leaves the bathroom and they don't wash their hands. Disinfecting. They have keyboards now that are washable. A lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, it's a keyboard. You take it out and you can wash it literally, or you can saturate it. I would suggest, especially in the cold and flu season, that they disinfect the high-touch areas, your elevator buttons, the door handles, the light switches, the keys, the chairs that you sit in, drawer handles. At the end of the day, use a disinfectant and spray them, and make sure you spray them where they're wet enough that you get your dwell and contact time. Obviously, if you do this regularly, you probably want to get a product that doesn't leave a residue. I was at a corporation last week, and the elevator looked like it had milk smeared all over the elevator panel. They're like, oh, yeah, we got to clean that. I'm like, you know what that's from? It's from your employees coming in and spraying a product that leaves a residue, and that's the buildup. The problem with products that leave a residue is it's really easy for germs and pathogens to, once they get on them, attach to them, to live there and mutate. So that's another reason why I try to use a product that doesn't have a residue.
So, and a good point to that, I think, is that a lot of times people think that they're doing the right thing, and it's actually making the problem potentially worse.
Right.
And it's just the difference. I think some key points to all this is the difference between cleaning and disinfecting is huge, and I don't think people realize that. Now they're going to start realizing it, and how important that is. But as far as getting something, because that's what you pretty much provide, or you help either train or provide people with the proper equipment to disinfect the proper way, fog, and not leave that residue and all of that. How often? So if somebody came, obviously they're looking at this and they go, we have just been cleaning, and everybody has thought that was the right thing. They were following all the necessary protocols, and they have somebody come in and wipe down. But we're really starting to learn, especially through something like this, that is really not enough, and really can cause more damage than it does good, unfortunately. What would you recommend? And as we're kind of wrapping this up, for whether it's a corporate office, if it is a daycare, if it's a play area, or a play business, entertainment business where people are gathering, really anywhere that people are gathering, restaurants, all of that, what is your recommendation? Like, is it, hey, you need to get proper grade, you need to do it so you're not leaving the residue, but you also need to do it X amount of times a month, and here's a couple different ways to accomplish that.
Right.
What does that look like?
So, great question, but let me start it off with a great study that was done. There was a restaurant up the East Coast. It was an older part of town. They had the windows open. Somebody on the third floor got sick and vomited at the restaurant, and embarrassment to them. And the restaurant had to clean it up. But what they found was some of those particles were airborne. They went out this third store window, came back into the second floor windows, and infected patrons there. It's a great study, very interesting how they even track that. They're like, how did the people on the second floor get infected when nobody from staff or the restaurant staff went to the second floor? The only thing they came up with was particles went from the third floor window, came down into the second story. And those patrons eating there became sick from the gentleman upstairs who was sick. So to answer your question about how often, each industry is different. Daycares, schools, I would suggest minimum monthly. Restaurants, I would probably say monthly, unless they know they've had a patron there that was sick, or they start noticing more staff are missing. Corporations, I would think twice a year would probably be good, and I would stagger it around the flu season. Quarterly would be nice, but realistically, I think if you did it during just after the flu season started and right after it peaked would be a good time for that. In other locations, if you start noticing that everybody's sick or there's always somebody sick, if I came in, what I can do is I can clear the playing field out. I can almost ensure there's zero germs in that facility or in that business. Now, all bets are off when that first person comes in and coughs or sneezes and shares those germs. Yeah. So I think dentist offices would be every 2 weeks. If they're a plastic surgeon, an outpatient clinic, I would do it weekly. Not to oversell myself, but it's huge liability and mitigation risk. What I'm doing is they have a surgical sterile procedure. They have a cleaning service. Then they have a third outside vendor like myself who can come in with the ATP swab. I can swab, and I can tell you what your germ count is. When I'm done disinfecting, I swab it again. I give you a second germ count and show you proof of reduction in germ. You keep that for mitigation reasons. Should somebody try to sue you saying, I got an infection or I was sick here, one, it's going to be hard to prove. But then you have the ammo that this is our cleaning policy. This is our sanitation policy, what our EVS crew or cleaning crew does. Then we have a third outside vendor come in. He validates how well we're doing or not doing to improve on, and he almost zeroes out the germ count for us. So,
wow. So you go through all those steps to provide them with that validation that they're doing everything they possibly can to avoid any type of an infection.
Right. I've learned at daycare, what we did was when I first started with this ATP meter, it's a germ count basically, is I was just checking germs sporadically. Then we started fine tuning it, and I would ask the customer what he wanted tested to find out if his employees in this particular daycare are cleaning well. So he started off with toilets. I'm like, Steve, that's a hard one. It's going to be a hard one really to do. We did it anyway. And what we found out was really interesting. All the toilets were pretty much about the same count. So we know about where they're at. One hardly had any germs on it, but two were skyrocketing. We were like, why are those two skyrocketing? So talk with the teachers and the owners. What we found out is the one that had almost no problem with germs at all wasn't being used, hence didn't have germs. But the two that had the highest germ counts happened to be the toilets that the children are learning to go to bathroom on. So what we learned from that is those particular bathrooms needed a little more extra attention to detail on disinfecting and cleaning.
And I imagine that, obviously parents are very always worried. They're, they want to make sure that their kids are staying germ free, all of that. They probably aren't even thinking about this until now. They're going to be really questioning what that daycare is doing to avoid infectious diseases. And so walking through really quickly what your process is. So let's take a dentist office. And I know I just jumped around there, but I got thrown off. So we're going to hop into the process of what it looks like, right? A dentist office right now, obviously they've just had a cleaning crew coming in. They think they're doing their stuff. Now they're like, okay, all this going on, we need to make sure all the proper precautions are being met. We need to make sure that we're really taking things to the next level, not only for our staff, but for our patients. And, they're starting to understand the severity of everything. So they're looking for how to do that. Obviously, you are one of those professionals that have been doing it. You validate everything. You make sure you provide them with the proof that the germ count has been decreased each time you come in there or completely done away with. But what does that look like from the second that they call you and they say, hey, we don't know if we need your services, but we know that we need to take all necessary measures to kill any potential infectious diseases or germs that we have whenever it comes to our practice. What does that look like? What do you do? Do you go in and test?
So you picked the industry. The dentist industry is pretty unique because there's a couple of key points in the dentistry. So I would come in, dentist offices, we're going to say dentist offices, they're pretty clean. They keep them really clean, and they understand the importance of being clean and the sterile processing. For me to come in there, usually it's after hours or the day they're not working. I laser measure the room. I put those numbers into the machine. The machine will automatically calculate how long to fog, how long to do my pulse fogging, which we know as contact or dwell time. And then afterwards, it takes about 2 hours for the hydrogen peroxide to dissipate and come back down to normal levels. The unique thing about dental offices, when they're doing some type of oral surgery and they're doing a cap or a procedure in the mouth, when they're drilling out inside the tooth, they need to make sure it's super, super dry and germ-free before they start packing something in there. Because while they're doing that, one of the concerns they have is if a particle comes in there and floats and lands in there in that short amount of time they have of cleaning the inside of the tooth, drying it before they put whatever they in there, if a wrong type of particle gets in there, they could have an infection. So the benefit of a fogging system it gets all the particles in the air, which they could be concerned about. So the dentist's office is unique because disinfecting the air as well. When I'm in talking with clients, I always bring up other things. I'm not just disinfecting my service with them, but I also want to share what kind of detergent, what type of disinfectant you're using, how often do you change your filter in your HVAC system. You have a UV system in your HVAC system to help eliminate odors and germs as well. And one thing I've learned with hospitals, to my surprise, and daycares, where are they cleaning floors with? Because you can imagine you have 100 people from 100 walks of life and backgrounds and tribal and whatnot, what they're walking on their feet, and now they're bringing it into your place of business. Those particles, those germs, or pathogens are coming onto the floor. Every time somebody's walking by, eventually those particles get in the air and you breathe them in. Some places are you just using floor cleaners, which is nice. The floor is clean, but it's not disinfected. So basically when you're mopping germs back and forth, left and right, you're not really picking up or killing them. So I'll tell to them about techniques, about disinfect your floor occasionally if you're not doing it weekly. Use a microfiber mop head, because if a company is using an old string type mop, they're way behind times. That's an indication to me they are really behind times. If they're not using microfiber, the important is microfiber. It picks up pathogens and germs and it holds on to them. You can wash them. They have a wash cycle about 60 or 80. What I do in my company is I have color-coded ones. At a certain month, I know all the red microfiber mop heads need to be thrown away, and I just rotate the stock. But does that answer your question? I get off on a sidetrack.
Yeah, no, I the one thing that I want people to really know too, and it's because I've been out to some of your jobs in the past, and if they're a daycare, if they're a dentist, I mean, you come in. It doesn't take an overly long amount of time for you to come in, fog the rooms, fog the offices, and you can do it after hours. So their business is not interrupted. You come in, you fog, you leave. They can leave everything where it's at. Right. And so it's very minimal work on their end.
Right.
And it kind of, and you get all that validation. I mean, the technology's incredible, but I think that's just important to really point out. And I may have missed something there, but that's one thing I think people need to understand, is that you literally are able to come in, you just take care of things, fog and it disinfects, and there's minimal work on their end.
Exactly. There's actually no work on them. The only work they really have to do is let me access to their space, put their smoke detectors in test mode, because the smoke detectors will see the fog. It's that thick. Think it's smoke and alarm, but it's very simple to counter that. You just have your fire alarm system put in test mode, and we don't have a problem. That's really the only work they have to do. I'll do all the other heavy lifting and disinfecting. So when they do come back in, rest assured, they're almost at a 0 germ count.
That's amazing. I mean, and just the fact of how easy it is, but also the validation that you give. Biosecurity obviously is I definitely agree with that. I think that's huge. But the other side of it too, I think that especially these businesses in the medical field and all that, the importance, because of probably the increased exposure to what we're going through, exposes this infectious disease and the importance of it to the consumer and to the customer. So the liability is increasing by the minute as we're going through this. So having something that is validated, and you can say, hey, look, we have done everything. Every 2 weeks or every month, we've come in, they fog it. So not only is it easier, and not only is it done with not much work on their end, but you also get that validation. And
we're fighting
game changer.
We're fighting against a threat we can't see. We don't know if it's present. We don't know if it's come in. We don't know if it came in and left. We don't know until it's too late and someone's sick or someone's contracted and has a pathogen, not just the coronavirus, but you have there's all kinds of viruses and bacterial infection. Before the coronavirus, it was Ebola, but before that, if a school had a meningitis case, oh my goodness, we've got to disinfect. I'll tell you a success story. Seminole County, Florida school system, huge success story, is they ended up budgeting getting 10 foggers, buying foggers themselves in the budget. What they do, they call themselves like Tiger Team. This Tiger Team will disinfect one school, and when they get done disinfecting that school, they'll jump to the next school. When they're done with the second school, they go to the third school. While they're disinfecting throughout the school year, if one school should have an outbreak or has a low attendance, they will leave their normal rotation and they will go to a school that's concerned as they had an outbreak. So in the morning, when the media is there talking to the principal, like, oh, we understand you had a case of meningitis, the principal is going to say, yes, we did. We had the school disinfected with our Tiger Team last night, and the kids are back in school today. There's no story. There's no bad publicity. The schools were proactive. And why every school system doesn't have this? Because what do we hear about every school year at most universities? There's a flu outbreak. There's mold. Some of the dorms had to be shut down. Almost every year you'll find, in fact, every year you do find stories, just where. So that model that Seminole County school systems did in Florida, I think is huge. They're ahead of what most school systems and university systems should be doing. They should have.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So to kind of wrap this up, I mean, regardless if people are just wanting more information on how they can disinfect their facilities, or if they need it, where do they need to go? How can they reach out to you?
Sure. So I've got a website, pathogen.PATHOGENDGA.com. I do a lot of social media stuff on Facebook, Pathogen of Georgia. You can see a lot of videos, a lot of interesting stuff there, as well as obviously LinkedIn and Twitter and Snapchat.
Twitter. I love the way you call it that.
I know, I always say it wrong.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. This is great. And appreciate you hopping on. And I definitely think a lot of people are going to get a ton of value out of this. So I just appreciate your time. I know you're busy right now. And if there's anything you need, please reach out.
I appreciate it, Brandon. Look forward to talking to you more.
Absolutely.